Dear viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program, Out of the Box. George Friedrich Hegel, a German philosopher who lived in the 18th and the 19th century in Germany, is one of the greatest philosophers the world has ever known. But actually, many people would say he's much more than that. He's not only a mere philosopher, no. He is someone who initiated and founded a new school of thought, a new school of thinking. His dialectical theory and his dialectics have shaken the world. He talked to us about the black and the white, the cold and the hot. In other words, everything and its opposite. The thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. Many other thinkers were inspired by him. Marx and Engels were just a few people in their Communist Manifesto, and many others. They implemented his ideas in the political and the economic system. So how important are the ideas of Hegel in history, and more important in nowadays and the days to come? To shed more light on this great philosopher, I'm really happy to be accompanied by my guest, Emad Barsoum, who is an independent writer and thinker. Emad, hello and welcome to the program.
Mohammed, hello again, and thank you for this opportunity that you give us every time to discuss and argue together about our great philosophers in the history.
It's always a pleasure having you with me, Emad.
It's always mine. Thank you.
And to start off, do you think I exaggerated when I said that he is a whole school or an academy rather than just a philosopher? Is this an exaggeration? Is this blown out of proportion? Or is this fair to say?
On the contrary, I think you didn't give it the right size of it.
Okay.
Because he's not more than a school in itself or a total academy of knowledge and philosophy. I see him as the father of the modern thinking we are adopting now in science, in politics, in history, in religion, in every aspect of life. And I believe that without the founding theory of the dialectical theories, we would not be in our modern life like this now. In such a progressive and rich world of intellect and innovation, of course. So no, absolutely, you have given him the right description, and I really admire that description too, that he is bigger than just a philosopher. And yes, indeed, he is the father of philosophy, the modern philosophy, of course.
Definitely, he's a great figure in history.
Yeah.
And again, let's talk about the context of his, of his time.
Yes.
He came at a very crucial time in history. He came at, the 18th and 19th century. And while there was a renaissance, there was a big change, a big leap ahead in intellect and philosophy during the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and whatnot. But during his era was the big physical, materialistic, tangible leap, if you like, with the Industrial Revolution, with the flourishing of modern science and modern technology and so on. To what extent was he inspired, in your opinion, by his time?
Well, actually, first of all, Hegel came in a time where he broke the chain or the link that Aristotle and Plato established 2,000 years before his theories came out. And it was transferred through many philosophers through history as the same concept. It doesn't have the two polars of idea. So it's just one-sided theory always. They established theory and they ended at the same time without any dialect. So what Hegel did during his times, he broke this chain. He made it, no, we cannot take things for granted like this. We have to discuss it, and maybe we have different opinions. On top of this, our opinions is not the end of it as well, the two opinions, because we have to get together all opinions and we grow up and form what kind of a pyramid of opinions that creates one final opinion. But this has to do a lot with the time that Hegel came in the Industrial Revolution, and also in the time of after Renaissance as well, where science and art has become fundamental aspects of modern life at that time. So in order to promote for the modernization and the progress of society, you need to break lots of taboos. You need to break also the dogma of one-sided story or one-sided idea. Everything is debatable. In order to achieve a certain economic theory, let's say of the capital, for instance, you need to have two different opinions. You need to have two different sides of the theory. You need to have two different or more than two aspects, which is the thesis, and then its antithesis, as you mentioned earlier. And those two together will produce to us what we should really agree on and follow based on this dialectic situation or that discussion. So he actually opened the path, or opened the way for science, technology, modern politics, even revolutions at that time to shape and take its form as we know it now and develop. And the biggest example, of course, that you started with was the manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, because Engels and Marx, they used his theory completely, but just inverted it from spiritual to material. Yeah. So they didn't change anything except that the matter that they're discussing. Hegel was more about the spirit and the mind, and how the mind and spirit can be very broad and open to debate and discuss and come up with another theory. Marx did the same thing, but with material, with money and material, which formulated the life at that time into what is known as Marxism after that. So he came at the right time, and the world needed such a way of thinking. Otherwise, we would have still been locked in the chain of Aristotle and Plato.
And do you see them all like beads, of a rosary or of whatever that are connected to one another? Because previously we talked about René Descartes, and René Descartes, of course, is known for his Cartesian doubt.
Yes.
And so, again, it was the real portal for the scientific thinking. So you need to put everything to the test. You don't take anything for granted. So no dogmas, again. You need to be very skeptic about everything. You need to analyze everything, and so on and so forth. So do you see this like a continuum, or like was this sort of an increment to what Descartes was saying? Is there any kind of overlay or overlap you see here?
As we said, that all the philosophical theories that existed after Aristotle, and passing through all the ones it's a long time to mention them all, and reaching Descartes and Kant even, they always had, although they had some doubts and they raised the questions of doubt, however, they didn't introduce any option. However, on the other side, Hegel gave us the option of the synthesis. So he got thesis and antithesis and produced something third one. This third, I would call it third dimension of his theory. This third dimension never existed before. Mm-hmm. And although that Descartes opened the road again to think, but Hegel taught us how to put it right.
Perfect.
How to put it in its context.
Okay, let's stop with this short report about the most important ideas of Hegel, and we'll be back to continue our discussion. George Friedrich Hegel was a German philosopher in the 18th and 19th centuries who developed a dialectical scheme that emphasized the progress of history. George Hegel's original intent was to devise a method to resolve disagreements and control outcomes. The Hegelian formula consists of the following elements. First, the thesis, which represents an idea or opinion. Next, the antithesis, which is a counter-opinion or opposite idea. Finally, the synthesis, which represents the domain where thesis and antithesis intersect and overlap. So, in other words, dialectical synthesis can represent consensus or compromise. The interesting and powerful feature of the Hegelian dialectic is that as soon as we reach a synthesis, the synthesis itself becomes a new thesis, thus restarting the whole process again, incrementally and progressively, moving forward toward the next predetermined outcome in a sort of a dialectic helix. The Hegelian strategy requires a process of tension and resolution in order to reach a predetermined outcome. But how do we create tension in a group, and how do we control the outcome? According to Hegel, one way to create tension is to introduce diversity. By introducing diversity into the group, tensions are raised and the chances of conflict are increased. Diversity is needed for conflict according to his model. To overcome division or create consensus, or in other words, to create synthesis out of thesis and antithesis, we need to establish an environment where people of different opinions, loyalties, and affiliations can discuss in a non-judgmental and non-exclusionary environment. They can, in this environment, discuss their desires and perspectives which were suppressed by a higher authority. In this way, each individual is allowed to liberate his or her thoughts and also his actions. They would liberate it from fear of oppression and thus are able to rationally liberate themselves from the higher authority itself. Being freed to think and act for themselves, they can overcome the old world order. In a rapidly changing world, people need to learn that the only way to overcome a crisis, to avoid destruction and chaos, is by reaching a compromise. Finally, he says that people must learn how to overcome the rigidity of the past and the old way of believing and acting which divided people and communities into conflicting nations. Dear viewers, after watching this short report about the most important ideas of Hegel, we're back again with our discussion. So the report shed some light on the most important ideas of Hegel. Now, according to Hegel, again, there is this spiral, and it's something that continues. So you have thesis, antithesis, they clash, and then you have, the outcome would be the synthesis, and automatically this synthesis becomes a new thesis, and so on, infinitely.
Yes.
Now, he said that there are some prerequisites for these things to happen, because he was trying to explain the progress of history. And he was talking about that for you to create this change, you need tension. And for you to need tension, it's a domino effect, or it's like, one thing needs the other. So for you to create the change, you need tension. And for you to create tension, you need differences. And you need an environment that will not shun or marginalize anyone who's different. But in order for this to happen, you need to get rid of all forms of oppression. To what extent do you agree with this formula? Do you see that it's a fully valid one?
As you have described this formula or this equation, didn't remind you with a chemical reaction thing? or atomic
Absolutely.
reaction. So
Absolutely.
you needed the raw matter and then introduce some kind of energy on it and then catalyst and then whatever to produce other
It
energy and
reminds
stuff.
me exactly of acid plus alkali gives you salt plus
Yeah,
water. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is a very, very valid theory of or equation for intellectual chemistry or the chemistry of the mind. And it is not just also very, very, I would say, very interesting in a way that we adopted in life, but it's also a very total theory because it included in it all the inputs of a successful formula. To reach
Mhm.
a result that's successful, we need to have all these elements or these inputs to come up with it. So definitely Hegel was absolutely even foreseeing the future of intellectual knowledge or thinking by having this formula in place as well, because it is in science, it is the basis for scientific research. In history, it allowed us to go into the philosophy of the history and discuss exactly what led to that situation that we're in now without being biased or to one side of the story. So it allows us to dig deep into the history and its stories. But mostly, it has also the importance to open doors in discussing and in criticizing ideological and religious ideas. Simply because if we cannot open the door to discuss a religious idea, then actually, without Hegel, we will be living in the darkness of the mind.
So let me just follow up here with another question,
Yes.
and then we'll definitely delve deeper into the crypts of this point.
Yes.
But um, you know, you said he gave a very comprehensive, all-encompassing formula, and you totally agree with his prerequisites
Yeah.
that you must have an open society that would allow for different opinions and whatnot. But what if we have the thesis and the antithesis, but the antithesis or the antithesis is always oppressed and not allowed? Will this result, I'll give you two options, A, in no synthesis at all, or in a malformed synthesis? So do you think the synthesis is inevitable, whether you like it or not, the progress of history, the change will happen whether you like it or not, but it can be just a good change, healthy change, or a malformed one? Or if there's oppression and these prerequisites are not met, synthesis and change will never happen?
Actually, according to the results of Hegel theory, I am with the second option, which is that synthesis is inevitable because that was proven in not proven actually, it was stated in Marx theory as well
Mm-hmm.
about the communism, about what became communism, that the inevitability is a must due to the theory of Hegel as well. So whatever we have thesis and antithesis, and they come together as this, they will produce the synthesis, so which will also act again and produce another two polars. So it is inevitable that the inevitability actually that affects all the aspects of life. We can take a very simple example of progression in any kind of science, in economy.
Mm-hmm.
Economy started with feudal system, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
then the industrial revolution came in and produced a new kind of economic system that uses capital and employ people, give them wages and bonus based on the productivity. And then we had lots of theories came into that in economics and management that led to the capitalism after that. Capitalism produced other things like the monopoly, and then there's anti-monopoly, and then we have
Yeah.
the
So
freedom of market and the free market and demand and supply theories. So it is a continuous process of development. And that's exactly what Hegel had put basis for.
So again, taking your exact example that you just pointed to here. So you're talking about the feudal system, which depended on nobles, landowners, and serfs, just who would work there.
Yeah.
And then eventually with the Industrial Revolution. Now, if we take the Marxist approach, it is again a clash between the, the proletariat, who are like just the workers, and and the bourgeoisie, and the bourgeoisie, they are the owners of the means of production.
Yes.
So can we say here that this was an evolution or a synthesis, but this was a malformed one because it was not given the proper prerequisites for that? Because at this time in Europe and in the West, democracy as we know it today was still at its infancy. So there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of civil strife happening, and also in the even we saw the French Revolution, revolt against the Bastille, the famous prison, and using the guillotine to get rid of the king and queen of France, and then eventually it led to a major dictatorship. You had an emperor, so you got rid of a king to get an emperor.
The tyrant emperor, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you think these are like good examples that would, depict or portray or prove that change is inevitable, but if not given the proper prerequisites, it would still come, but it will be malformed. It will not be in a healthy situation?
Well, in theory, it is true that without these prerequisites, there will not be the end result that we have seen.
Mm-hmm.
But what I take on that since we're talking about Hegel, that his theories never meant to cause this change.
Mm-hmm.
As we said earlier, it was more spiritual and mind, the dialectical theories in mind and spirit. So he never reached that point of the material and the ones that based on economy, as we said earlier. So again, his theory, I don't know if it's by coincidence or Marx actually deliberately used it to formulate his theory, resulted in many other reactions of that theory. So industrial revolution was
our fellow citizens.
Yes, exactly. And but by the way, Marx was very much impressed and also affected by, influenced by Hegel, of course. Maybe I would say that Hegel was the reason why how he started to group up his mind and come up with all his theories later on with Engels. But the main thing is that I'm going to say that Hegel, when he started to develop his vision about the dialectical theories, he never meant to have this material result of it. Mm-hmm. All he did is he opened the doors for human mind to elaborate and discuss and criticize and think and reach a solution to all the mankind problems, mindly and spiritually. That's what he would have targeted at the beginning.
Absolutely.
And part of it, I'm sorry to say that, to interrupt you, that in the Industrial Revolution, with the rise of the bourgeois and the rise of the modern technology and science and modern art at that time as well, was all ingredients. But you cannot separate them as well. So they are ingredients of the same direction. It is evolution. It is mind evolution. It is needed to feed every other aspect around it. Mm-hmm. So in order to have workers to work in the city, you need to provide them with entertainment. Entertainment requested art. Art requested musicians. And then they request, there is a requisite for building houses for them. Then we start to see buildings. And then there is a way to take their money again that you gave them as wages. So you started to invent other products. It's an infinite line of...
it's the whole paradigm. It's a whole system. It's a whole cycle.
Exactly, yes.
Dependent on one another.
So, but all also, still all these elements will still exist under the umbrella of Hegel dialectical theories.
Okay, so now moving to other aspects as well, like, in thought, in religion, in politics, and economics. But I just want to ask you a question, and I need just an answer with a yes or no, and I'll tell you why.
I'm afraid of these questions, Mohammed. Let's go ahead.
No worries. It's not a booby trap. Trust me. It's not, I'm
No,
not ambushing
of
you.
course not.
No,
Of
no
course
worries.
not.
So, how many percent of Hegel's prerequisites are present in the world today? On a scale from, like 0 to 100, if you want to give it in percentage, or on a scale from 0 to 10, if you want to give a number.
Oh, the prerequisites are more than even Hegel's would thought about.
Yeah, but like at least Hegel's prerequisites to achieve this pure, healthy change. Do you think today how much freedom of thought we have, like how much liberalism do we have, how much acceptance and accommodation do we have to other ideas and differences?
I would say 25%.
25%. Okay.
And I have a reason for this number, if you allow me.
Please,
Because even we are in the 21st century, and after we have studied and understood all these philosophical theories of from Aristotle till Hegel and even until now, we still lack lots of the inputs or the prerequisites that Hegel put in to have this huge revolution in mind and a huge revolution in logic as well. Freedom of speech, for example. Is it true there is freedom of speech? I doubt it. Freedom of belief? I doubt it. The acceptance of the other. It's missing all over the world, regardless of what people say. So even you cannot express your emotions sometimes publicly in some place in the world. So all this would lead to one thing, that we are still missing a lot of prerequisites to revolutionize our mind and reach the point that we have this spiral idea or philosophy of the dialectical theory that Hegel put in. So we are still behind in reality to achieve this maximum freedom of thinking and freedom of reaching the synthesis. It's too, we are still far from it. Still far.
Now to the $1 billion question that I believe everyone is trying to solve. So again, another question, I just need a yes or no. Do you believe or do you think that there is a clash of cultures and civilizations? And when I say cultures, definitely I mean beliefs, thoughts, religion, tradition, and history. These are all parts and parcels of culture. Do you think there is an integration, they complement one another, or is there a clash?
It is a very sad clash.
Mm-hmm.
It's a drastic clash. This is my answer to you. It's a drastic clash.
So you see today that it's a zero-sum game. It's your gain is my loss and vice versa.
Yes.
There's no compromise. There's no middle ground that anyone is meeting at.
Just, I would invite you to look at the social media for any group of people and read the comments, read the posts on it, and you realize that even among the same house, we'll find this kind of clash. So imagine on a bigger level of society, on a bigger scale of community, and you'll end up that the world is living in a huge clash of civilizations and clash of ideologies and clash of political views, clash of economic reforms. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's sad.
It's very sad. It's extremely sad. And, before I ask you if there's a formula of getting out of this double jeopardy and that we're living in, really,
Yes.
we're always between the hammer and the anvil. But what will happen? How do you foresee the future if this continues? Like, if people do not stop this clash, where is this taking us?
According to, I will use now Hegel theories mixed with Marx theories, when we talk about the spiral of historical
Dialectics, yeah.
of the historical inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
So, briefly, civilizations are formed, grow, and then fall.
Yeah.
And that would apply to many other ideologies and dogmas and also regimes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it. I'm not very optimistic about that. It might not be seen in the coming near 100 years or so. But yes, mankind actually is destroying its own existence by not following the prerequisites of Hegel
Okay.
and by creating this continuous clash of civilizations that does not want to come to an end because of greed, because of stubbornness, because of the dogmatic thinking of that everyone's ideology is the right one, everyone's religion is the right one, everyone's belief, everyone's power.
So
So,
do you think we're approaching, not in the religious sense, but in the human sense, are we approaching some form of a doomsday, an apocalypse, man-made apocalypse?
well, it is, as we said, inevitable because of if you apply the theories of the
Yeah.
philosophy, yes, it is inevitable. And but again, I cannot give you any time or expectation. Even it could take hundreds of years. It could take few years. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, it's happening, and I think we will. Either unless we think about it in a different approach, and we have generation that would try to build the bridges between all the cultures and ideologies and religions around the world, then we have no chance for this, our race, to exist in the coming hundreds of years.
Absolutely. And, maybe like something very much related to Hegel's ideas, and like it was even in one of cartoons that depicted his ideas in the short report in this episode. Like you'd have a man and a woman talking to one another, and the man's speech is depicted into vertical lines, and hers is depicted into horizontal lines. But when they mix together, it creates positive signs, pluses, pluses, pluses. So although this is vertical, this is horizontal, but when they mix together, it's a plus sign. So reaching this form of a positive accord, I would not say compromise, but it's an accord. So it does not have to be black and white gives us gray. No, it can be dark gray. It can be light gray. It doesn't have to be 50-50. Exactly. So if both you and I are given the freedom, we will not necessarily end up in the middle of the road. We can, I can be more inclined to take your side, even 100%, or you would do the same, or maybe we'll be closer to your end than my end. The question here is, how do we achieve that? What is the formula for this? Because things are really going out of bounds, going out of hands. The amount of atrocities we're witnessing every day, are beyond everyone's imagination. And unfortunately, the worst is yet to come from what we can see now. So what is the formula to stop all of this madness? Where do we start? Do we start with the individual? Do we start with the media? Do we start with the political systems? Do we start with the religious beliefs? Where do we start?
That's a very confusing question, Mohammed, because if we sit here for 24 hours, we will not be able to put all or to get together all the
But at least, like, I'm just asking for the spark. Where would
the spark
the spark rekindle the torch of hope?
There is a hope, of course, but as I will use your words about the dark gray and the light gray, The only reality that you can see in life is that the life is made of hundreds shades of gray, because there is no black and white, as of course we know. All as long as we have mind to think and analyze and observe, we cannot say there is black and white. Otherwise, we'll still be ignorant. But we have hundreds shades of gray, and that difference, these differences come from the differences in the human nature. And simply, if you bring someone that has grown up in a society, a very conservative society, and he is deprived from proper education, and he is not exposed to the international world, and put him in the same room with someone who have knowledge, travel the world, speak different languages, and is very intelligent, and put them together in the same room, they will never be friends. There's no grounds. Again, to bridge the gaps between those clash of civilizations, it requires hundreds of years, maybe, to do it. Especially that we see no sign of progress otherwise. On the contrary, in some communities and in some places in the world, you see that people are going backwards in time. They are not progressing.
They're regressing, rather. Yeah.
Regressing, of course. So how would you expect from this kind of human regression to develop a basic or a basis for human understanding and human acceptance? And you can see it in everyday news, everywhere.
And is there a lot of hypocrisy in the world today? Like, in your opinion, is this, do people really, they don't practice what they preach? Would you say that?
That's the name of the game of politics. That's the name of the game. How do you think that politicians win most of the time? By hypocrisy. Can we have clean politics? Yes, we do. But are they willing to adopt it? I doubt it. Because they try to win with what is guaranteed to win. But I do believe if they try to play politics with the clean rules and transparency and democracy in its real meaning of it, we might have a chance at least to fix this beginning of hope and better life. The beginning of hope.
Again, my question again is, where will this emanate, or where will be the inception of this? Like, you see it in, for example, in political institutions, in educational institutions, in religious institutions, in media. Like, where is the starting point?
Acceptance of the other.
Again, in all of these paradigms together simultaneously, or would you think that one is more important than the other? Like, do you think it's like more politics or religion or media or like who?
It has to come first from the sociological point of view. So it is a matter of sociology first, which under the sociology you have education, you have economy, you have also religion, and you have freedom, group of freedoms. But it is related, it is interrelated, and it's always prerequisites to form the whole equation again. But that could be the utopia.
Absolutely.
So I cannot guarantee the utopia that would exist.
Yeah, and
it's a very Platonic idea. But if you could fix education, economy, politics, religion at the same time, then I would give you all the Nobel Prizes.
But like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, again, who serves the others? So like, who's affected by whom? So is like religion affected by politics, or politics affected by religion, or are they both affected by society, or society? Like,
it is a reciprocal role in life. Religion sometimes serves politics, and politics serves religion. So they play together this role of role playing. They do it actually. It's a kind of role play.
Okay.
They change places all the time. And actually, this kind of alliance between politics and religion that created all the evil in the world. And I'm saying it, and I'm responsible for what I'm saying. From the beginning, when there was a political power, needed the religious power to support it and to convince the primitive people about the importance of political power. So now the religious power came to surface. And then for this religious power to exist and to continue, they needed the political power to protect it and secure it as well. It's a reciprocal role.
So you see it more like a sort of like the communicating vessels theory.
Yeah.
So
Yes, right. Absolutely right. Yes, yes.
it's
They all come at the same level at the end.
eventually, yes.
Eventually coming at the same level and same importance and same hunger for power.
Yeah. So
And who's paying the price is everybody under those two powers.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's you know it's I don't know, it's very dark comedy really. And
Well, I can see some of the communities in the world, or some groups or nations actually, got rid of those two powers, or the dominance of those two powers, actually.
Mm.
They are very low numbered in the world. However, although they achieved this kind of success, now they are threatened by other powers that is coming to them to destroy it again, or to
Yeah.
enforce their own power on top of them again, because they became so lean, they became so adapting because of reaching this high or the maximum level of humanity. So they became very pure and vulnerable. So some other powers are trying to take benefit of this, and then again, it's a it's a spiral thing.
Which is again another proof of Hegel's theory.
Yeah,
Again,
absolutely.
it's
Yes.
always dialectics. It's always dialectics.
We go any direction. We go back to Hegel's theory of dialectical theory.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like you said at the beginning, you know, like if we will talk, we can take days and days to talk a
Yes.
lot about.
I wish you have the time.
Yeah, like, but you know, like I wish we were just able to give, sort of, you know, put some things in a nutshell for our dear viewers, and definitely all of the great philosophers were discussing there, of course, much greater than to be discussed in one episode or even several episodes. But we're just trying to, you know, like steer things a little bit and try to think ourselves with our dear viewers. Ahmad Barsoum, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you for this very fruitful discussion.
It is always my pleasure, Mohammed, and thanks to you and thanks to all our distinguished viewers and followers and your great followers as well. And I'm looking forward to see you soon again, talking about another great philosopher of our times.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank
you very much again. And dear viewers, if we were to come to a conclusion here again, like, you know, change is inevitable, whether we like it or not. You know, the famous Scorpions song that came out with the fall of the Berlin Wall in, you know, 1989, The Wind of Change. And the wind of change is inevitable. Things will change whether we like it or not. And it just blows in our faces. The wind of change is coming. No matter how much we oppose it, it is happening. And we've seen, you know, much too many really examples of very troubled birth of a sentences, because, you know, the thesis and the antithesis, they met, but they did not meet in the ideal, you know, circumstances. So this is the nature of life. And it's about time that we really understand it. The very ancient Far Eastern theory of the yin and the yang, the black and the white, the positive and the negative, the dark and the light, And you have the seeds, like the black has a white dot and the white has a black dot. So the seed of each one lies within its opposite. So clashes will always happen. I don't think any one of us would like an eternal day or an eternal night, an eternal winter, an eternal summer. I don't think so. So how is it that we want to keep the status quo? It's again, we are fighting to stay in our comfort zone. We're starting to stay in our most conservative area. We don't want to get out. And unfortunately, we start calling the change bad names. So in many societies we saw, for example, like something like socialism, and even Marxism, all these theories, when they were written in the book, like, you know, the theory is something, but the implementation was something very different. So what Marx and Engels, for example, said in their Communist Manifesto is very different from what we saw from Lenin, from Stalin, from thinkers like Trotsky and whatnot. It is always very different because people always would cling to their comfort zone and they just try to sweep it under the rug. But guess what? You know, the pile is too high. The pile is too high now. And no matter how big the patch is, it will not cover the huge cut that we're suffering from. We just witnessing war in Europe. We witnessed cataclysmic effects by nature and so on. So it's really time to wake up and give space for change. And more than give space for change, enjoy the change and encourage the change. Dear viewers, until we meet again, thank you very much for watching. Please take good care.